So I'm going to teach you how to study less and get higher grades, especially if you got below 70% in your recent mock exam. This method is only 3 steps long, so I'm going to show you that in full detail. But although it's time effective, it is a lot more difficult. It's challenging, but obviously it saves you more time, so you get to do whatever you want when you're not studying. But there's 3 things you're going to need before I go into it. First, you're going to need your question paper, which you should have. Your mini mock question paper you should have at home. Secondly, your answer sheet, which you're going to have to come to zipgrade.com/s up here, this link, and your parents should have your login details here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to get one up. If you don't know your login details, you should ask your parents for it, and they should have it. If they don't, you can always text the number 470-977-681. You can text that on WhatsApp and just ask for your login details, tell me your name, and yeah. So first you obviously log in, go to your posted papers. I'll have to blank out this name, and here you can see your answer sheets. So if you go onto there, this is the answer sheet that you'll be able to see. And that's going to be part of what you need. And the last thing is you're going to need a notebook. So again, question paper, answer sheet, notebook. And now I'm just going to show you exactly how to do the 3 steps I'm going to show you. Let's get into it. The first step is first find the questions that you think you got wrong. So this might come in the form of, because it was a week or 2 ago now, you might have to redo the questions, go through your question paper again, redo them. Obviously you can see which ones you've circled, and your job is to find which ones you think you got wrong, and this is without looking at your answer sheet. So without looking at which ones you actually got wrong, your job is to identify which ones you think you got wrong, which ones are most likely to be the ones where you lost marks. And like I said, no one here got 100%, so you should find quite a few actually. And if you're finding only 2 or 3 questions that you think you got wrong out of the 120 or so questions overall, and your overall mark is 30%, there's something going on there. There's probably a bit of overconfidence or just lack of understanding of a lot of these things. So you have to be very careful, and your job here is to circle as many questions as you can that you think you got wrong. So you want to get as close to the real mark as possible. So again, this can come in the form of redoing the paper, actually reading through all the questions and doing them again, seeing which ones you think you got wrong. What you'll see is, if you had already done the paper and you actually circled some of the answers, circled some of the questions that you were unconfident on, you won't actually have to do this step. You can skip it because you already have a bank of the questions that you think you got wrong. Which is why I'd advise you, for all future homeworks and mocks, circle questions that you're unconfident on. So the ones that you're not 100% sure that you got right, circle them and use them in the next 2 steps that I'll show you. So as you'll see in the example later, what I'll do is I'll go through the paper again. I'll circle the ones that I think I got wrong, and I'm going to be acting as the student who's got this answer paper, who did this exam, right? And once you've got that list, what you can do next is you have to retry them. Obviously carefully, retry them carefully and open book. So that's going to show you, you're going to see actually that you're allowed to Google things, you're allowed to use the dictionary, you're allowed to look up tutorials on how to do some maths questions if you're struggling on it. The whole point of this is to do it until you get it right, until you're 100% sure that you got it right. This means you can ask people for help as well. That should be the last step though. You don't want to find the answer immediately, because what you could do is just look at your answer key on ZipGrade and just change it, and then try and figure out what went wrong backwards after you know what the answer is. That's not going to help you that much. What's going to help you is doing it open book and using as little hints as possible. So obviously first try it without any help, without using Google, then try Google, then if that's too complicated, ask for a parent, bring it into a teacher, something like that. So you have to retry it until you're 100% sure. At this point, what you should have done is you should have gone through all your questions in your mock exam and redone all of them to the point where you think you got 100% now. And what's actually going to happen is you probably still wouldn't have got 100% because it's still quite difficult, right? But that's the job. That's your job in step 2, is to try and get 100% without actually seeing the answer key. So you can do whatever you want to try and get that mark. But when you're retrying it, if you change anything, if you change any of your answers let's say on question 5, I change it from A, I change it to C. You have to write down why. So you have to write down first, you have to think about why you chose A in the first place. I know it was a week ago or 2 weeks ago, so you might not be able to remember. But think about it, try and come up with a reason, and even just think through it logically and write down what you thought about, the pattern of thinking that you went through to get to the answer A. And then you have to write why it was actually C. So what you'll actually get is you'll get a list of questions or question types, and you're going to have, I thought of it this way first, which was wrong, because of this, which is why the answer is C. And what you'll come to see again in the examples I show you afterwards is what this is actually training you to do is you're using one question in a mock exam and you're actually mastering that question type to some extent. And this means in future mock exams, in future homeworks, you won't get this question wrong again. That is the whole point of this step 2. And that's why you're writing it down in a notebook, like I said, to really ingrain it into your head. You should look through the notebook every now and then throughout the week. And I'll show you an example of a type of question. It might be, for example, in maths, you might have got the question wrong, where it said something like this, and maybe you chose the answer A, which was, I don't know, what could I say? It was 10, and the answer was actually C, which was 4. And you have to write down why you chose 10. So you might have thought, oh, this is 5 times... You might have thought, oh, this is 5 times 5, and then you did 5 times 5 at the top. So that's what you'd write. I times the bottom wrongly. Oh, whatever makes sense to you, right? Because obviously 5 times 5 is not 10. It's actually 5 times 2 is 10, and this would then be times 2 as well. So that's why the answer is 4. And what you figured out is you make this mistake, and you're probably going to make this mistake in the future if you don't actually ingrain this idea into your head, is that you often make the mistake of using the wrong times tables for the bottom. And this means in future you're going to be careful in these specific types of questions. Within a few weeks, or like if you go through the past 4 homeworks, you won't be getting these types of questions wrong. So you won't be getting these equivalent fraction questions wrong, right? And obviously it's a bit more complicated when you get to a word problem question, but it's the same idea. If you don't understand it, try and figure it out yourself. Open book, use Google, ask a parent, or use the video solution, which I think will be out, and figure out what went wrong. So always note down how you did it the first time, what you changed the second time, and then make sure you don't make that mistake again. So step 2 is quite a long one, if you think about it, but it's where all the important work comes, and this is why I said this is more effective than doing another extra homework of 120 questions, when you could just go over all the questions that you've already done. You've done enough questions at this point. You've done 300, 400 questions, and you have a lot of questions to go through and redo until you get 100% on all of them. So it's not about practicing more, it's about just going over what you got wrong. And this is how you revise less and get higher grades, because this is the same as doing practice questions for another, let's say, 6 hours, whereas this will only take 2 hours total, maybe. What you see is time actually flies pretty quickly when you're doing this. It took me an hour to go through just one comprehension using this method in the next section that you'll see. But every single minute of those 2 hours is valuable to you. And if you're not going to do any other work at home, you're not going to do any CGP books, bond books, this is the best thing you can do. It's the only thing you really have to do. Obviously, if you're still struggling after this, there is extra practice will help, but this should come before bond books, before doing more practice questions, because you've done enough practice questions at this point. So step 3 again, you've done the whole paper again. You can always do it in sections like I showed you. So you've retried maybe the comprehensions, you've retried both comprehensions to a point where you think you got 100%. Now you remark your work using the answer key, which is online. And again, what you're going to find is you've done it open book, you thought you got 100%, and you still probably got some wrong. And again, you're going to be able to find a list of things, or list of errors in your pattern of thinking. And it's just going to come down to the same thing. So maybe you changed a question, question 6 from C to A, and C was actually right. And then you're going to have to go back and write down your reflection points as to what happened. Why did you change it to A? And why is it actually C? How do you prevent that in the future? And although it seems a bit futile, I know it sounds a bit, it sounds monotonous, it sounds like you're doing all of this, what went well, EBI stuff, it sounds boring, but it is very effective, especially if you prevent yourself from making these problems, making these mistakes in the future. And that's all you have to do. For every question you have to do these 3 steps. or actually it's 2 because the first one is just finding the questions. So what you have to do there is just retry it and then remark it. And you're using one question and you're exploring like 5 different ways that it could be asked, and there's only a limited number of questions that limited number of ways that a question can be asked. For example, a question about a problem-solving question about fractions. It might be something like has 8 apples and wants to share it between 15 kids. And if you're getting this question wrong, the solution isn't to do 15 more questions that are similar to this. The solution is to do what you just done up here. You reflect on it, you figure out why you did it wrong, and what you'll find is you don't even have to do these 15 questions, but the next time you find any of these 15 questions, you're going to get them all right. And at that point, you're actually hoping for these types of questions to show up in your exam, and that's how you get the highest marks. And obviously, it's not as simple as just doing it once, but it really like triples your returns. It has a big return on investment. But that is it simplified. And what I'm actually going to do now is just show you step by step how I do it on each section, just to make it even more clear. And what this should do is it should let you do this on every other homework. On the past 3 homeworks that you've had, actually you've had 4 now, and on every future exam and homework as well, to the point where it's just paying dividends towards your 11 plus. You're not going to have to stress and work 6 hours a day during your final month or so during the exams, which a lot of people will do, and a lot of your parents will make you do if you're not hitting the right grades. So I mean, you're really just saving yourself time in the future by doing maybe 30 minutes a day now.